Oh yeah, I might have to fix that soon. You know what? Fuck it. Doesn't really matter. Let me delete that. Might struggle to find it later. Hi, I'm Garfield Joe. Welcome. I've did this before, but I never picked up on tarot storytime. I want to. I full disclosure, I did two parts, and then in the process of life, I lost the second part, and it has deeply discouraged me. But I'm gonna attempt it today. I want to change the filter. Me, oh shit, not flipping the camera. Jesus. Jesus. What did I want to do? Wait. Sorry, I just wanted to change the filter. But it looks like I don't know how to do that. And so we shall embrace this and begin again. Full disclosure. I actually don't have to disclose shit. The book. So let's just pick up, you know? Spirit, let me tell the best story I can. So we have the Five of Teacups and the Chariot. So the High Priestess. Oh, sheesh. Too juicy. My bad. The High Priestess stood at the shore of a roaring river. For some reason, she couldn't cry. Although so much had happened that tore her apart. It was even hard to remember what had tore her apart. And it was a strange feeling because she wondered, shouldn't I feel torn apart? The only thing she felt was indigestion. She tried to remember. She turned to her cards. And she couldn't get a straight answer out of them. It seemed that every question she asked, the answer she received was unhelpful. It mocked her. And she really just wanted to know. What is this ache that's not an ache? And how do I make it go away? Further up the river, the magician sat. Without even thinking, he had given the high priestess everything. And it was only at this moment, when she was gone, that he really began to consider what that meant. It seems like there's a time skip. Fortunate for us. Two of Pentacles. He sat in front his altar and held before him his crystal orbs, but today they didn't seem to work. So he polished them, and he tried again. And he held the pose for far longer than he was accustomed to. Was it always this uncomfortable to sit in front of the altar? The priestess had stolen something from him. And he couldn't quite place it. He could feel everything just as he had before, and when he returned to his old methods, they yielded the same results, and when he spoke and thought, it moved in the same pattern, but he felt different, and it disgusted him. And he knew the high priestess was behind it, as she seemed to be behind everything that transpired in his world. Thank you. And as the high priestess couldn't remember what happened or couldn't tap into it, it seemed like the magician didn't want to. But it haunted him all the same. What happened next in the story, Spirit? Oh, or we should check in on the evil queen. The evil queen still sat in the shadows, still quietly having escaped justice yet again. Her plan had worked perfectly. The high priestess was mired in her solitude and sorrow yet again. And she was still free as a bird. Her cruel game was over. She won. Or so she thought. She adorned herself in a new coat and called for a big party, celebrating a victory that wasn't yet complete. Although she couldn't quite remember the exact shape of the pain, of the longing, of the desire, of the grief, she remembered who was with her when it happened. And so she took a small scrap of paper and wrote a silly little wish and put it in the bottle. And sealed it and sent it upstream. Not really sure if this little parlor trick of magic would do anything to make sure that it reached its correct recipient. But the feeling she had, though detached and strange and foreign, was so strong that her message in the bottle was transformed. A piece of broken sea glass turned into this gorgeous vessel. One that looked like it could come from any number of places. A magic that she thought was far more beautiful than could be her own alone. Maybe it would work. She put all the longing in her chest into the wish. That it would reach the magician. And she knew that even if it did reach him, that it simply might not work. Because she threw everything else away when she left without telling him. What would she say? That wouldn't sound like a trap. What would she say that would make him rise from his sultry space in front of his altar? She didn't know. She wrote the first thing that came to mind, hardly thinking whatsoever. She thought that she shouldn't have to work so hard if it was right. And if she was wrong, it really didn't matter what she said. So she made her final prayer and poured out her heart. In a way she never had before. Never before. She felt foolish like a child, and she fought with herself deeply about the words that she put in the note, not even knowing if they were true herself, but knowing desperately that she wanted them to be. She casted the bottle into the river. And she turned away. And she waited. knowing there was no real way for him to respond. But she prayed that the magic was strong enough that maybe just on the wings of her desire alone, she could end the very silence that she created. And she could finally find the way to feel this thing that she was just beginning to know how to feel. It was months later. She had gotten a new job in the new city, and the stories of her past were just that, myth. Everyone could tell they were true by her strength, her beauty, her quiet repose, the way she would do things that would trouble others for days and minutes, the way that anxiety rolled off her back like a sitting duck, the way she was ready to break any heart the moment she saw it. She wouldn't speak much. She was always quiet or studying or working. She became known for that. Her silence, her pensiveness, her energy would speak before she entered a room. And in this foreign land, she was crowned empress in a world where everywhere else they barely treated her as a page. And she didn't let it get to her head, but she held the feeling very close to her heart, because as much as she wanted to take claim for the energy she used to navigate this place, she knew it wasn't her own. But she didn't know how to give it back either. It was a familiarity that disquieted her. Only she seemed to know the source. Here in this town, in her quiet mumblings, she wasn't used to her world having privacy. She wasn't used to holding secrets. She wasn't used to holding anything. Meanwhile, the magician, who once had a gentle leap right next to the stem of his chalice, found that the rust had spread, and before, when only a little bit had dripped out of his cup, it was found he wasn't able to hold anything inside of it. And he knew who was to blame. The bottle appeared on his doorstep. Dressed in a ribbon that seemed to be made out of crystal itself. How could simple glass be more lovely than the ornate chalice that he had sourced through extravagant buyers? And when he plucked it open, he knew who it was from. How could he not? It might not have been clear to the priestess, but it was very clear to him that he did not owe her anything. But he would take the glass. How cruel of her. To give him something that he wanted and needed. He put it on his altar and removed the old chalice and sacrament. He began to wonder, is this what sharing is? That she took something so precious and gave something else in return? Why didn't he know? These were questions that were fine without answers in his mind. His altar was once again complete. He could then once again take the orbs into his hands and scry and see this peaceful, normal, regular fairy tale ending that he always wanted, well within his grasp now. The thief was gone. His kingdom was quiet. His chalice fixed. His wand was just as sturdy as ever. Everything felt calm. So why did this ending feel so wrong? He had everything. And he knew the answer. But he wasn't going to receive it. Not in the midst of all the pain. He scried into his orbs for hours and hours at his altar, seeking the answer over and over again. And for some strange, stupid reason, all he saw was her. And he could not make sense of it. Curious what the queen was seeing. The healer. The queen, who was still lush from her celebration, chasing the high priestess, now known widely as a criminal, out of town and out of the arms of her lover, had gotten horrible news. Not only was the high priestess healing herself and others in her new city, she was being flirty. No! Her screams echoed from her castle, scaring and disturbing her hungover henchmen. They really had partied, y'all. Although the high priestess couldn't remember much, she knew there was some injustice to be balanced. Someone was at fault for her faulty memory. It was the same force that had chased her out of her first city, the same energetic force that seemed to be so invested in her being alone. Who is this Queen of Cups? Who worked to silence the Empress? She had filled the glasses of everyone in the land who was happy to help her. But after the misguided celebration, the taps ran dry. And so this Empress started to lose her favor. She promised that they would drink forever off of the curse she put on the high priestess. But it seemed like that curse had been lifted. Everyone was starting to hear about it, and they were starting to wonder if the curse has been lifted off the high priestess, how will we survive? And there was no filled cup to quell the questioning demons inside of them. And so these beasts that had destroyed everything were hungry. And there was no one person who could feed them. And so, instead of staying enslaved, they fought back and were released upon the world. The funny thing about demons, A lot of people seem to think that they are creatures of evil. However, they tend to be very valued. Or rather, their value is in their value. So, upon finding that their value was not going to be met, these demons are needy. And they started to make new contracts. Already burned. They were willing to bet it all. Hell, they were at rock bottom already. Why not try something new? Instead of being the cold, heartless beasts of legend, they decided to travel and do something they'd never done before. They were going to invest in a star. The same beast or beauty, depending on who's reading the story, who they robbed of everything. They wondered what would happen if we took these fools and made them kings. It was an interesting arrangement because this is, as a little narrator's aside, demons don't use time the way humans do. So, for them, the story goes much farther than the beginning. The night the high priestess became a high priestess, and the magician became a magician. They traveled back before they'd ever done a working or before their hearts were broken by the evil witch. These two bright-eyed, bushy-tailed sweethearts with a natural charisma and perhaps a lack of material, but an abundance of strength, or vice versa. The very same demons that destroyed them, went back in time, and bid them an unspeakable offer. An irrefutable offer. A beautiful offer. How would you like to be the most powerful witch in the world? And the magician who was not yet a magician, and the high priestess who was not yet a high priestess, on that night reached out and took the devil's hand and decided that despite all conflict, nothing would stop them from achieving ultimate greatness. And nothing would stop them from finding a peaceful love. And it wasn't a decision made foolishly, although certain aspects of the equation were unclear. They could sense the deception. They could sense the deception. Oh, they could sense the deception. So true, I must say it twice, or perhaps thrice, that they could sense the deception, that the whole truth was not being offered to them. And if were they to ask for the whole truth, the whole deal might be off. And so, despite logic, they decided to move forward. To knowingly be bound. To rest in the arms of death. And begin the harrowing journey to become what they needed to be. Their sacrifices, the dastardly disguise of someone coming into their space, perfectly declaring what they are and what they'll take and what they'd give, became the cursed sword in the magician's hand. the very rods that the high priestess had learned to cast away was the same that she used to fight them. And every day, this truth weighed heavier on them in silence. Their beauty grew, their blessings pouring over them, their victories great. Their minds precise. Their solitude profound. And after their grand ascension to greatness, the demon slipped forward in time and took off its mask and said, I was the one who destroyed you. Are you ready for what comes next?